building the wall from the inside out to hold all this dirt back.
I bring batches of stones in for each course we lay, because they're the critical ones to put in the wall. We also have to raise up our formwork.
So we're setting ourselves up to put our next layer of stone.
We set out a line of stones in a curve, bed of concrete in the foundation ditch.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
This natural stone wall was the continuation of what we started on the upper level, using formwork to create the flat edge, building the wall from the inside out, backfilling it with concrete as we go. You end up with a really strong, engineered, but attractive wall to hold all this dirt back. This was an important artifact for the customer that a family member brought back from China, so we incorporated that into the middle of this wall.
I build these stone walls in layers, or courses. On a previous episode, we got the foundation course laid, and the concrete's had time to harden up. Part of managing the construction of this wall is how much stone we can have on hand at one time. So I bring batches of stones in for each course we lay. We need a variety of sizes in our stones, but the most important ones are the cornerstones, which have to be relatively large and square on their corners. I've selected some of these cornerstones and I'm putting them close by because they're the critical ones to put in the wall, and we'll place all the other stones around them to make them fit. We also have to raise up our formwork, as that's the system we're using with this stone wall. We're using treated timber sleepers for our forms. They're 200mm high, so we go up in 200mm high layers. I lock the new level into the previous level with heavy timber screws. I also remove some of the forms we've used on the back of the wall, because I'll be reusing those as we go up in layers, whilst I leave the formworks on the front to hold all the stone together.
So we're setting ourselves up to put our next layer of stone in this garden wall here.
With our timber forms securely in place, we need to add gravel into the gaps between the stones so concrete doesn't leak in front of them. I wet it down to keep it in place as we pour the concrete. The cornerstones are the most important structurally and visually, so I usually add these first as we build a new course. I'm using a piece of scrap concrete as a wedge to hold this large stone hard up against our formwork. This is how we ensure a really flat look to our wall when we rip the forms off later. With the cornerstone securely in place, I add other stones around it to help lock it in, and then we're ready to start adding concrete. For practical reasons, I do all the concrete mixing at the front of this property and then ferry it in with my wheelbarrow in plastic tubs. I mix two types of concrete for this process. The first batch of concrete we add has a pigment in it and also some extra mortar to make it extra sticky, so it bonds with the stone and fills the cracks more adequately. And the other batch is a standard concrete grey mix, which is where all the strength of the wall is. None of the grey concrete should be seen by the end of the process, so I don't bother using pigment in it. I agitate this pigmented batch of concrete thoroughly into all the cracks. I continue to add tubs of concrete until we can build up enough volume to start adding some of the steel reinforcement elements. In this wall we're using a lot of recycled steel, as it'll end up just as strong as rebar wood. I'm using some stainless steel tubed railings, which will add a lot of strength to the wall. I bury this steel reinforcement with some of the grey concrete mix and then move on to adding some more stones. After the concrete's filled up to the stones were previously laid, we're ready to add more stones on top. Once I have a new row of stones set in place, I backfill it with more concrete and we continue the process. Part of making the stone wall look good is having a nice variety of stone sizes. I'm adding this large stone on top of a course of smaller stones beneath it. This is a preview of how this large stone ended up looking in the final wall. You can see how mixing the different dimensions gives you a really attractive looking wall. I continue adding concrete and agitating in behind the stones until we reach the height of the sleeper we added this morning. I finished the course off for this wall by adding a steel picket for reinforcement strength, and then smooth off the entire section of the wall so I can set up for the next stage of our pour later. The next step in the creation of these stone walls that we're installing in this terraced hillside is to start the foundation for the wall that wraps around this mandarin tree. This curved stone wall is a continuation of the flat wall that we started next to our staircase. Its engineering purpose is to hold up the ramped pathway that gives us access to the different levels in this garden. Our finished structure is one continual stone wall, but for practical purposes I build them in overlapping segments. All the separately built wall elements tie in together to create one terraced garden bed with access ramp and staircase. As we can see, travelling up the garden path and arriving at our new platform. To construct the foundation for our curved wall, we're going to need to do a little bit of excavation. I need to create a flat area around the bottom of this mandarin tree. I need to excavate this quite carefully because I don't want to damage the roots of this tree, cause it any stress. Once I've created a flat enough area in the dirt, we set out a line of stones in a curve to create the base of our foundation. I'm using some packing sand to fill between the gaps of the stones so the concrete doesn't spill out. We're using our standard concrete formula for these stone walls, which is 2 separate batches, one with the pigment that goes up against the stones and the standard grey concrete that backfills behind it. After getting a nice bed of concrete in the foundation ditch, we agitate it into the stones with our trowel as we've done with all the other walls. One of the challenges of building this curved wall is the difficult access due to the mandarin tree branches. When our concrete's deep enough, we add our steel components. In this case, we're using an old piece of recycled pipe. I'm using a lot of old recycled bits of steel for our reinforcement in this wall. I'm also using proper reinforcement bar in some critical areas for strength. I'm adding a small stone to fill this gap that's too large for the gravel to fill. The next day, after our curved concrete foundation is set up, we do a little deconstruction on the other retaining walls formwork. Today we're going to build a bridging foundation between these 2 walls. First I have to pull off some of the formwork to gain access to the existing stone wall we've created. We have to do a bit of light excavation, taking extra care not to damage any of the roots of this mandarin tree. Then I can create a curved form wall for the continuation of our curved foundation construction. I'm using a strip of thin plywood to create the curve to join these 2 walls together. I add a couple of timbers for structural strength, place stones along the inside of the curve, then backfill it with concrete the same way we did the previous curved wall.
I remember her in songs, decades old, but it doesn't matter. Stumble across so memories, try to recall before they shatter. She kept dreaming of a world big enough for everyone, but she knew it must rain before it rose. She kept dreaming of the day butterflies survived the wheel, even though she got knocked down and never showed.
Once our concrete's filled up to the top of our stones, we smooth it off in the same way we've been doing throughout all this wall process. You can see the curve that we've created as a foundation for the rest of the wall that's going to go above it. The next day, after all the concrete is set hard, we start to pull apart the formwork for the main wall. As I remove the form timbers, I'm stacking them close by because we'll be rebuilding this entire form at a higher level for the next concrete pour. After removing the first sleeper, we can see all the gravel that we added in between the cracks of the stone to stop the concrete from penetrating through. I collect all this gravel so I can reuse it later as the wall goes up. Removing the second sleeper gives us a chance to see how the walls turned out. I check over the wall to make sure no concrete came through the stone gaps. Because whilst this concrete's still quite soft, it's easy to chip it out if there has been any spill-throughs. I give the stone a thorough wash down with my hose, and then we go on to removing the formwork from the back of the wall. All these timbers will be reused as we build the wall higher as well. The wall is at its halfway point.
People knew her by her will to make it whatever she put her mind to. Late night hours up the hill, serving coffee to strangers, talking about revenue. She kept dreaming of a world big enough for everyone. And she knew it must rain before it grows. She kept dreaming of the day butterflies survive the wheel. Even though she got knocked down, it never showed. Dear Lily, where'd you go? Where's your heart at? Why'd you fall back?
This completes the removal of all our formwork. With the entire base of our wall constructed, we just build it higher from here. I'm using some heavy timber braces as platforms to raise the height of the treated timber sleepers we're using for the formwork. After positioning the sleeper on the braces and getting it flat and flush up against the wall, we level it and then lock it off with some heavy timber screws. With this frame secure and level, we can add the other components necessary to build this formwork up to 200mm higher. This form is also going to overlap some of the smaller pours we did on the wall that go around the mandarin tree, which is part of the system of how we construct this wall, by doing separate concrete pours that overlap each other and are tied together with rebar. When I complete the construction of the form, I take one last final inspection to make sure we don't have any holes where the concrete might spill out. You can see here how this formwork overlaps the foundation for the curved wall we poured earlier. This overlap will lock these two systems as one. Join me in the next episode as we raise the height of this garden bed stone wall. Thanks for joining me this week on my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.